If you were born and raised in Mississippi during the Jim Crow era of the 1950s and 60s, what would your life be like? And how would it shape your view of America? Well, that might just depend on whether you were black or white. Freedom writer and civil rights activist Lou Von Brown is a regular contributor to this show and is a major part of the film, The Uncomfortable Truth. But in the film, we don't get a lot of time to dive into his story. On this episode of The Uncomfortable Truth, we're going to do just that. This is Loki Mulholland, and it's time to get uncomfortable. Levon, I wanted to, in the film, we get a little sense of your family history, a little sense of you. Um, there's a lot that was left on the cutting room floor. And in this, I wanted people to really understand who you are and what you went through, because there's two things you say in the, well, there's one thing you say in the film in particular. At the very beginning of the film, you said, "I never liked white people."
Right.
And that really, that's intentional in why I put that in the film, because, I wanted to ruffle some people's feathers, but then they start to understand why. Um, and then the second thing that you said, which was not in the film, was you grew up in a different America than I did.
Right.
And because of the America you grew up in, um, you had no reason to like white people.
That's true.
And that's not a specific white person, that's white people.
Correct.
And that's a system
Correct.
that's attached to that. So, so I want to dive in on that. I want to dive in onto why. So give me a sense of your childhood, how you grew up, and what was going on, and why your opinion of white people, meaning people in general, and so forth. Yeah.
I'll give you. I didn't like. I wasn't that overly fond of black people either, but I'll explain a little bit of both. Where I grew up and when I grew up, all the schools were segregated. So that means that I only went to black schools. I didn't go with white kids. Um, I didn't. I had to address all white people as sir or ma'am or something. Uh,
Mhm.
I felt that you could get killed at any time by white
Mm.
people, and nothing would be done about it. I was 10 years old when Emmett Till was killed, and
Right.
I remember that all the adults in the neighborhood were on the lookout for kids, because what would happen is white people would get angry at whatever. Well, you didn't know who was going to get killed, and you didn't know who was going to be attacked. They were allowed to
Mm.
come into your neighborhood. They were allowed to come up, knock at your door. They were allowed to do whatever, and you could do nothing about it. So you can if you went to the movies, there was a place for you to sit. Now with the
Mhm.
white kids, there was a place for you to sit. Clothing when you
And
had
that
a
was and that was in the balcony, typically.
in the balcony, typically, yeah. Well, that's what we sat in the balcony. Black people.
So why didn't you guys just spit over the edge?
Well, if somebody told who did that or poured a drink over there, I don't know why we didn't do it. Everybody knew their place,
Mm.
and you knew that you could die for doing simple things like spitting over the edge. So you just didn't do that. You knew you couldn't try on clothes when you went downtown Jackson to buy clothing. You had to know your size.
Right.
So all of those stores, all of the movie houses, all of the everything was run by white people,
Sure.
right? So I had no reason that I could think of. I didn't have any friends that were white. Well, I did have one friend, and by the time we reached a certain age, we had to stop being friends.
Were you told explicitly?
No, you're not told anything specifically. You were told whatever. I forget his name now, but he's busy. He's doing whatever, and it was around the dating age that this would happen.
Mm.
And so I thought we were friends. We were not. I couldn't go to his house, I could go to his house, but I didn't go in his house.
Right.
And if I did want some water or whatever, they had a glass for me. All that kind of stuff. And that was all because he was white.
My work has taken me to a lot of places, and I've been fortunate to meet some incredible people. But when I came to Selma and met Joanne Blackman Bland, I knew I was in the presence of greatness. Joanne was 11 years old when she was attacked on the Edmund Pettus Bridge on Bloody Sunday in 1965. She wasn't old enough to vote, but understood its importance enough to be there. After Selma is an in-depth look at how our right to vote has eroded since the signing of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. The fight for the right to vote continues. Get informed. You can find After Selma on Amazon Prime or visit LokiMulholland.com to
What
purchase a copy for
reason
your
did I
collection.
have for liking white people?
You're right.
Food. You want to go to the store to buy food. You bought it from a white person. And you might go in the store and there'll be other white people there. They would come first. They would be waited on first. So I can't think of a reason for me to like white people.
Well, let me ask you this, because you say something about, it was understood that if you stepped out of line, you could be killed for the simplest of things.
You could be, or you could go to jail.
Right. Well, was this something that your parents told you, or just through general observation, through
I don't know.
whispers?
I don't know. I think it was just whispers, but my parents might have mentioned it, but they told me how to act. My grandmother must have told me how to act around white people. But think about that. You grow up. My grandmother, there was a woman that used to live on the. Her father owned the plantation that we lived on or worked on, and I was a young boy, and this white woman used to come talk to me. And I never thought about it one way or the other. I just know that my grandmother was always on edge when I was talking to this woman.
Hmm.
And she was on edge.
How old were you?
I don't know. I was on the 10 because I was living in the country.
Wow.
So I must have been 7, 6 or whatever. And she was always afraid, I found out later, that I would say the wrong thing.
Hmm.
So I
That you
grew
might
up.
get not that you'd say something sexual. You just might say something smart, being a smart
I
aleck
would
or whatever.
whatever they considered the wrong thing.
Right.
So it could be smart, it could be sexual, it could be anything. You don't know what those people are going to get pissed off about. So I lived that life. Someone asked me once about in one of the speeches about, when did I discover that being black meant something. I says I didn't discover it. I lived it.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in it.
Right.
It was a part of me. So I don't know. I guess people tell you like it's Mr. So and so. There was another thing. A lot of people were Mr. So and so or Miss So and so, but not the black people.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They had names, but they were Annie or they had used their first name. They were not people, or they were if they were crazy.
Right.
If they would kill other people, you used to be able to kill black people, and you spend a few days in jail, or maybe not. So it was not that I didn't. There was no reason I didn't want to be around white people.
Right.
Because I knew that meant I could get beat up. I could get anything, any number of things could happen to you. So that's what I meant when I said I didn't like white people.
Right.
Because I couldn't trust them. I didn't know if I was going to say the wrong thing. When I finished high school, I was 16 years old and I worked at this place. It was an Ice House. Now the guy that owned the place, obviously white, that owned the place was as crazy as I was.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't care one way or the other about anybody. To him, I was just a guy, and as long as I stayed in my place, he and I got along fine.
Right.
Not so true of his wife.
Mm.
Right. So I had to be real careful around white women. Right. So white men, I might say something. They may like it, they may not. But white women always scared me.
Well, you would never say something about white women in front of a white man.
Ever. ever. Oh no, oh no, no. He could say whatever he wanted, but I did not say a word.
But you better not agree with him.
I don't say anything about this woman.
Right.
Nothing. Right. So
Well, yeah. So let's just say you're working in the store, and a white woman walks in who looks, you beautiful, shapely, whatever.
I don't look at her.
Don't even look at her.
No, no, no. I go. I leave.
Just
You
make
you
sure that you're
can't
not
do
even in the same airspace.
you can't do that. I just told you they killed a guy for that,
Right.
and he didn't do anything. Right. So, and in the neighborhood, black people did not live with white people. You lived in a neighborhood that was all black.
Right.
So, like one of the reasons I never learned how to swim was because over near the college, Jackson State, which was on the other side of town,
Hmm.
and you had to go through a white neighborhood to get there. Well,
Right.
my mother was afraid to let me go.
Yeah. Want a great way to help a worthy organization and educate children about the civil rights movement? Visit our foundation, the Joan Trumpauer Mulholland Foundation, at thejtmfoundation.org. That's thejtmfoundation.org. thefoundation.org. We are a 501c3 established to help end racism through education. A $5 monthly recurring donation will provide curriculum for 30 students. As my mother used to say, I can't do everything, but I can do something, because doing nothing is not an option. If you have wanted to help in this cause but didn't know how, now you can. The Joan Trumpauer Mulholland Foundation at thejtmfoundation.org.
So I grew up uh, not particularly trusting white people. Now I have to say that I didn't trust my own man either. I didn't like him at all.
Yeah,
I didn't like him at all,
but that's a
and
father-son thing, or
that. Well, it was more than that.
all right, yeah,
He was just an evil son of a bitch, and there was nothing about him I liked. But at least I was in my neighborhood. I was around black people, and I felt safe, at least from other white people.
let's go back to your grandmother for a moment. Sharecropper.
Yes.
So you were out there.
Well, she was not really a sharecropper. She was a field hand. A
Oh yeah, okay,
sharecropper, you grow something, you plant, and the owner takes so much of it. That's not what
right.
she did. Yeah, she was just a field hand. So she picked cotton, she was hoed cotton, she did peanuts, she did whatever, but she never owned anything.
Were you out there too?
She, yeah, when I was old enough, I was picking cotton.
How old
Um,
was old enough?
well, as soon as you could carry a sack. So I was a young man. I was 6, 7 years old, and I had a sack. I had because when I went to stay with my grandmother, um, she was going to pick cotton or hoe cotton or whatever. Now I was too young to do technical work, so I couldn't I couldn't hoe
Right.
because I just didn't know how.
Yeah.
I could weed, by hand.
Right.
But I was very young, so I used to pick 40, 50 pounds of cotton a day,
As a six or
and
seven year old.
yeah, as a 6 or 7 year old, yeah.
Man. And the house she lived
Um,
in was just a shack.
I was just a shack. I mean, basically, she lived on the property of some white guy, and he had it was a shack. I mean, it was a little more than a shack. It
Right.
had a floor, so it's a little more than a
Well,
shack.
yeah, but
And
the floor had
and when
holes in
it,
it,
well, of course it did.
and you had snakes that would come in.
Well, yes, I was always afraid of that.
Did you ever have? Did you
And
ever
she
have?
had chicken.
You had a snake that came in, right?
No, it was a
No.
rat, but well, no, no. I'll be back up. There was a snake came in because it was cold,
Mhm.
but my grandmother would. No, snakes didn't bother. I guess they bothered me. They didn't bother her.
Yeah.
So I didn't get bitten, but a snake did come in, and a rat came in. So that's how we lived.
Yeah.
So I can't think of a reason why I would like white people. And even when the movement started, like remember I finished high school in June of 1961. I was arrested July. right?
Okay.
So there were a lot of people that were coming into Jackson. But when I got sent to the penal farm, uh, whites and blacks were separate.
Right.
So, and they used to beat people all the time at this prison.
Jeff
So I was
Parchman.
always afraid.
Oh, you were a
No,
different
no.
one.
At the Hines County Penal Farm.
Oh.
I got sent there for sitting on the wrong side of the courthouse. The wrong side was the white people's side.
Mm-hmm.
So I got sent to the penal farm.
You just never learned, did
Me
you?
no, I didn't. But, you know, and people ask me, but I reached a point where I knew I could die, but it didn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And slowly white people came down. Most of them were Jewish, by the way.
Right.
But white people came to Mississippi. Few of them stayed. I don't know how Lou and I ever became friends. He was Jewish and white. To me, he was just white.
Right.
And later on, I learned about his family and what we came up pretty much the same way. We majored in the same thing in college, but I didn't like him.
Yeah.
Your mother came. When she came, it was just somebody in the movement. It took a long time before I could build up any trust. It was only over time that I grew to trust your mom and other white people that were in the movement.
Right.
Because I knew they were there for the same reason I was there.
Sure.
They weren't. Yeah. So I grew to trust her. Well, you were easy because you came much later.
Right.
But in the beginning, I did not trust white people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just and in the beginning, I didn't meet a lot of white people. Like the people that recruited me into the movement were both black.
Well, yeah.
They were
yeah, and that was who? That was
Bevel and James Bevel and Bernard Lafayette. Lafayette's still around.
Yeah,
Bevel is not.
Yeah, cancer. An Ordinary Hero was my first award-winning documentary. It's about the life of my mother, Joan Trumpauer Mulholland, and her participation in the civil rights movement. For most of us, our mothers are heroes because they're mothers, and mom is just mom. But when your mother's a civil rights icon, and yet you never really knew it, things change. Go check out An Ordinary Hero and find out how choosing to do what was right instead of what was easy helped change the world. You can find it on Amazon Prime, or visit LokiMulholland.com to purchase a copy for your collection. Now, there's a story that you didn't tell that I want to get. I don't know if it was at the Hines County Penal Farm or not, but where you snapped back at one of the officers. Your hands were locking up, and you couldn't, work.
Yeah. Well, no. Well, on the penal farm, I had to do. I don't know what they call it. Cut grass. I had to fix the road. We actually went to work on people's plantations, which is illegal, but we did it. So my first time out, they had this scythe, I guess it was,
right,
that you cut the grass with, and I was cutting grass, and my hand just froze up. Yeah. And that time, I said to I stopped working. I mean, I just thought you worked, and so I stopped working because my hand was hurting. And he said, "Go back to work." So I says, "I can't because my hand is tied up." So he had the guys hold me down, cut a branch, and he beat the hell out of me. And I don't know what it is that made me do this, but when I got up, it was go back to work, and I said, "No, I can't work." So I got another beating. And the only thing that scared me, well, then he said, all you niggas sit down because if one of you are not going to work, none of you are going to work. And at first I felt a sense of pride that I'd gotten a break for these guys. Except I noticed that most of them stayed away from me.
Mm-hmm.
And they when I got back in the truck to go back to the farm, they explained to me why. And why was the old man that ran the place was white, of course, but he used to beat people at night with a strap. And I was afraid that I was going to get beaten by him. And I guess, I don't know what happened, but I guess word came down that he did not do that. But I was beaten. And then one day, this is later on, same place, the guy called me and he said, Brown, and I didn't snap at him. I just said, in my mind, I don't know what I was thinking. I answered him the same way I would anybody else. So I said, what? As opposed to, yes, sir, Captain.
Yeah.
So he pulled a gun on me. And I thought I was going to die. Because it was pointed right in my face. And his hand was shaking a little bit. Because a 45 is a little heavy. But I don't think that's why he was doing it. I don't think he had ever shot anybody. And from that point on, we had this, I don't know, he would talk to me about stuff. And one day he left me. The whole game was like around the bend, and I was by myself. And I don't know if he wanted me to run or he trusted me enough to stay there. But his thing was to warn me about the communists that were trying to get me killed and the outside agitators. I don't know. But I learned a lot about him because we filed a suit against him as soon as I got out. When I filed a suit against the place, I just named him. And then one of the guys who had broken out of jail while I was there, actually came, he was let out of jail. They were going to reduce his sentence if he would do me harm. And I was warned about that by another guy who was there also when I was there. So it was, life was not, it was not it was not pleasant. But I was committed to staying in the movement. And I was scared because a lot of times we would travel at night because we had to be wherever we were going the next day. People had to see us because they were afraid. So we had to show them that we weren't. And I was, like I said, I was 16 years old.
And jumping out of windows with the Klan coming after you.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So anyway, that's a little bit of my life, and that's how I grew up.
Thank you again for listening. Make sure you head to my Patreon page at patreon.com/Loki Mulholland. Show a little love if you can, and get access to even more content. Until next time, don't be afraid to get uncomfortable.